Welcome to another Band of Gamers podcast. This is episode 91. We are getting up there. It is Memorial Day, so welcome everyone if you're joining us after a long holiday. And with me tonight is Zeux Adamus. So thank you, Zeus, for joining me. Osiris Prime is out and enjoying his vacation as I am back. So thank you for locking the show down for the last couple of weeks, Zeus, and you guys seem to churn through a good number of E3 predictions. So it'll be interesting to see where those are at and what leaks happen along the way before we actually get to the show. So if you're just coming back from a long long weekend, if you're like me and you've been working outside, a little dehydrated, a little sunburned, sit back, cool down, turn on, and enjoy and with us for the next 45 minutes or so as we talk about games, as we talk about summer games, actually, and not summer games like the Olympics, but what do we do for games during the summer? And so let's start with that, Zeus. Let's talk a little bit about, like, right when we were kids, summer gaming was always a time when you could dive in, you could spend time, buried in a deep game. Maybe you didn't have homework, maybe you didn't have as many responsibilities over the summer, but as adults, that isn't always the case. So I was thinking of this weekend as I'm spending so much time outside and working, is that I really didn't even get a chance to dive in as much over this supposedly vacation weekend as I hoped. So when I think about summer gaming, oftentimes I have the impression that I'm going to get a chance to play a lot, but with more daylight, with other things going on and families, I don't know that that actually happens to me. So Zeus, when you think about summer gaming at kind of with this stage in your life, what does summer gaming mean to you?
So I guess we're going to need to come back around. I'm going to need to ask you, where does all your time go? Because it's kind of weird, and I was thinking about it too, right? Like, you would think that as adults we would kind of be off that rhythm, but I guess what I found is, in two phases, right, is you still kind of acclimate towards that concept of a summer vacation, even if you don't really get one. You tend to take a couple extra days getting out of work early. Maybe you tend to leave earlier on a Friday than you might during the winter months. And little things like that. The extra daylight kind of encourages you maybe to invest a little more time and leisure. And even when I was single, I had friends. People on my friends list on Xbox Live were college kids or younger. And it's very interesting because when we get to talking about our playlists, I'm going to talk a little bit about the Dreadnought beta that I've been playing on PlayStation 4, and when I wrote about it over this weekend, it reminded me very much of that summer that Chrome Hounds came out, and that was one of the big things, is because a lot of people in my squad were on summer vacation. I wanted to play, and so there were times, over that summer that I would, with the extra daylight, that I would go into work early, at 6, and then get out of there at 3. And get home and log on to Xbox Live with my buddies and play just a grotesque number of hours of Chrome Hounds, right? But that's what you had to do because it was a persistent online world. And now as an adult, that I'm married, where my wife works, she is off for the summer, so and she takes the kids on vacation. So what winds up happening is I wind up having a week, a couple weeks over the summer that I don't go with them. That I get to spend time digging into some games, and like a couple, I remember back in 2010, like my big thing was I didn't go with them over 4th of July weekend, and I spent a grotesque number of hours in Galactic Civilization 2. So now I need to ask you, so where does your summertime gaming time go?
So I guess my summer gaming time, sometimes that happens, right? That our significant others take some time. When my kids were little, there were often trips up to grandparents or other family, and I did have time to kind of marathon through a few things. But I think what ends up happening is it becomes later at night, or maybe I'm outside more, so I'm more tired. Or I think truthfully, what's been happening over the last week or so is that it may be the summertime, but work is still work, right? And so I am finding myself not quite ready to dive into a big narrative game because I don't quite have the mental space to. I'm thinking about house projects or logistics for a summer vacation coming up. And so I just want kind of a zone out game, right? I found myself going back to Diablo 3. I found myself diving into the beta of Marvel Heroes Omega on PlayStation 4, another action RPG, just kind of to kill time, right? Because I had spent time doing other things. That said, I cherish the chance to take a little bit of time off work, right? While everybody else is out of the house before summer vacation is up or before, as they're out, to be able to just dive in and spend some time dedicated into a game. So, part of this came up over the weekend. I was talking to an old CAG user, World Voyager, and he was talking about, it's his summer vacation. He's leaving on a vacation and looking to get back into, he's played a lot of multiplayer games this spring, but looking to get back into a narrative game now that he's in a different mental space over the summer. So he's looking for, that idea of, I've got time to kind of invest in something, and what am I going to spend my time investing in? So I think that's, like anything, right? That our gaming tastes are going to ebb and flow, that summer is a concept created around a school calendar, that vacation can be taken at any point in time. But, I do wonder if you find yourself, Zeus, with Chrome Hounds, with things like that, with Dreadnought, does the multiplayer experience, that interaction with others, give you something to pull you in as more of a hook over the summer, or are you like World Voyager looking for that narrative experience?
Well, it's interesting, and I don't know that there's one consistent theme. Like you mentioned, it ebbs and flows throughout the year, but it probably kind of alternates a bit, from year to year too, right? Like I said, that one summer with Galactic Civilizations 2, that was just a big, meaty, deep dive, super detailed, but wholly single player experience. And then there was that year with Chrome Hounds, right, where, like I said, getting home early, allowed me to invest a lot of time in gaming. It's tough, and then what I really liked, you also mentioned, was Diablo. Which one did you say, 2 or 3?
3, yeah,
3. So,
3 on. Yep.
so I can definitely remember the summer I had between grad school and going was it grad school, or was it going to grad school? It was grad school. It was after completing grad school and going back to work. I had about a month off, and the big thing was I had just gotten and this was a while ago, so I had just gotten my first ever gaming laptop. It was really arguably my first real laptop ever. It was an old Dell Inspiron, like one of the original series. It had like a 4 megabyte or 8 megabyte like video card in. I think it was 4 megabyte memory video card. And I remember spending just hours that summer while I was off playing Diablo 2. Um, so this year, it's I don't know that there's a genre theme. I think I spent this past weekend playing a lot with my handheld consoles. So I put a lot of time in on Nintendo 3DS, which I really haven't played much of throughout the year. I put a lot of time in on my Nvidia Shield Portable. Um, and I'm really itching to get back to the Nintendo Switch, which I haven't played a lot of time on. Um, so I don't know. This summer there might be a lot of console gaming and handheld gaming. Be interesting to see if I continue playing my desktops because uh, desktops bring a lot of heat. So I don't know that I'm gonna be as inclined to let as the device I'm on, the workstation I'm on tonight is what I call the Beast of Five Fans, because it's my really big gaming desktop with the SLI cards in it. But obviously that's a thing that I get nervous about running like in the heat of the summer. Um, so we'll just have to see. I don't know if I've quite settled into a big theme yet, other than I definitely want to spend some time, focusing on campaigns, right, and kind of chewing through things in chunks. And Destiny's probably going to get a chunk of that time as we continue to revisit that. I want to say that franchise because I feel almost like Destiny and all its DLC is kind of a franchise in and of itself. But yeah, I don't know, man. What about you? What are the things you remember of summer's past gaming, and what do you think you are going to be focusing on this summer?
So I think one of the things you said that it really strikes home is that idea of heat, right? It's the summertime. Having lived in multiple houses over the last decade, I always find myself kind of migrating to the lowest point, the coolest room in the house, which often also has a TV and a game system hooked up to it. I can remember the year, the first summer after Destiny came out. Talking about Destiny, right? Is that summer leading into the Taken King in 2015? I spent a lot of time playing Destiny in the basement because it was cool. There was the moments of triumph. There were a number of kind of key things that you could try to do before the end of the first year, right? You go back to all the raids, defeat Skolas and the Prisoner of Elders, all kinds of different pieces. And so it kind of reconnected me to a Destiny clan that I had been with earlier in the winter. And as we were all trying to kind of marathon through some of those moments of triumph. So, and actually, having you talk about Destiny on PlayStation 4, I actually picked up Destiny for PlayStation 4 again to kind of churn back through to play it as I have a character that I started back in the beta, and maybe I had two levels done there and 2 stages, and so it's been interesting to kind of go back in and see it. So I think that may be my case as well. I bragged a lot on this broadcast back in the winter time or back in the beginning of 2017 of churning through all my backlog. And I've kind of lost steam there, Zeus. I hate to tell you. But, I think March came and the Switch came and Horizon Zero Dawn. And, I kind of jumped on the new release train and had a chance to play some of those. And have not gotten back into and then the Destiny hype hit again. So I have to get back to my backlog to kind of clear things out, or at least to try. So if I think about that, I'm thinking about the summertime. There's not a whole lot of games that are released, Zeus, but you've got a list here of some good ones, and I want to kind of run down this list, and feel free to jump in as we go. So Star Trek Bridge Crew is coming out next week. So at the end of this week, actually. So Star Trek Bridge Crew is a VR game. It was actually originally it was an indie game. I'm trying to remember the name. It was big at PAX. The idea of it was basically a Star Trek game, but then it got bought up by Ubisoft and the license slapped on it. And so it's the idea that everybody is, what is it, 4 to 6 players, and that you're all controlling a different console in terms of weapons and navigation and propulsion and, things like that. So that's only VR though. So we've got another looking here. We just had Injustice earlier this month, and now we've got Tekken 7. So Zeus, are you a fighting game fan?
So I am of sorts. Again, it kind of ebb and flows. And probably historically, I have been this type of fighting game fan that I just like getting it and playing it by myself. And so yeah, I guess I am. When I buy them, I enjoy the heck out of them, but it's they're also not things that I necessarily like seek out or have to buy. But I have been a fan of the Tekken series. My brother is a big fan of that series, and for many generations, that's the only reason like he owned like a PlayStation 2 or a PlayStation 3. And he got me into it, and I finally kind of figured it out and picked up on it. I had one of my big summers was where a bunch of buddies and I, where we were working that summer, we were I was able to have my PlayStation 2 there, and we would get together, basically after lunch and after dinner. We were out working in the field, and we would come in and we would play just like dozens and dozens of matches and rounds, like after meal, before our next event. And it was the only time I've really played competitively. So it was fun. It was an awesome time. I may pick up Tekken 7. I'm not absolutely certain.
So let's see what else is down that list. So another game. Have you? Obviously, you're a big racing game fan, we've got a couple other games coming out on June 6th, both kind of the realistic, well, maybe not quite, Dirt's not quite realistic, a little motocross, right? And then something that is not realistic at all, but we've got the Wipeout Omega collection, which is, Zeus, do you remember how many, it's the PSP or the Vita games, or is it a remaster of some of the classic PlayStation ones as well?
I'm not perfectly positive. I think it's about 4 games at least in the pack. I believe it's Wipeout HD, which was a PlayStation portable game, but it also became available on PlayStation 3 via PlayStation Plus, I think. And I think there are 2 or 3 other things in that collection that I've never played. Dirt might be. I need to do some more research, but right now I'm thinking Dirt is a realistic game. I think it's weird. Their naming convention has been weird in this franchise, particularly since they got, particularly since Colin McRae passed and they let go of his name for the licensing. But there was a hyper realistic game that came out, I think, the end of 2015, which I have, which is Dirt Rally. Or maybe it's just Dirt. I'll need to.
No, I think you're right, though. I'm looking at this, and it's a Codemasters game, so it is very kind of mechanics, physics. It's a sport cross game, but it's going to be kind of the realistic traction, handling, all that. So I spoke too soon in terms of, but I do remember playing Dirt 2 on PlayStation 3, and yeah, it very much is a little more in the technical side. So, and Wipeout, it looks like, is Wipeout HD, HD Fury 2048, which was, yep. So again, a couple of those. Nice price, right? It comes in that kind of $40 price point of remasters, right, similar to the Crash Bandicoot remaster that's coming out this summer as well, kind of hitting that sweet spot, unlike some of the critics and complaints around the price point of the Switch remaster of the, what is that, Street Fighter 2 that came out this past week. Right, and right. So we've got, go ahead.
So yeah, like you mentioned, Dirt is the hyper realistic simulation game. I think the difference might be this time there'll be a little more emphasis on modern day racing, whereas Dirt Rally, there's a large section of the game that focuses on kind of legacy rally racing. That may just be a slight perception based on some of the adverts that I see running right now. But yeah, I'm probably definitely looking forward to Dirt 4. Again, what I buy is kind of random, but that would definitely be a game that I would be interested in picking up if it falls right.
All right. So
now you added Valkyria Revolution.
I did. So let's before we go into that though, let's hit the June 16th release, which had their test punch this past weekend with Arms. So Arms for the Nintendo Switch. I had a chance to play it a little bit on Friday. My sons played it some on Saturday and on Sunday. Did you get a chance to play it at all, Zeus?
I did not. I was on travel this weekend, and like I said, I've been hyper-focused on the Dreadnought beta. So how did it compare to the Splatoon Global Test Fire?
In terms of an infrastructure and a test, it was great. It was really solid. I actually like the lobby itself. It's interesting how it has it set up. So in a very Nintendo fashion, that it takes the character that you've chosen and kind of floats its head around the screen as you match up with other characters to fight. But at the same time as you're doing that, right, it's a total Nintendo way to do that. But there's also multiple different game modes. So there is a one-on-one game mode, and that sometimes you get matched into that. Then there's also a volleyball game mode, which basically means that you're kind of punching a ball back and forth across the net. And that can either be a 2-on-2 or it can be a 1-on-1. And that's a time-based one. It's relatively short. It seems like the rhythm of when you punch, makes more of a difference than any type of spike. It's kind of there's some strategy there, but again, on a test fire, there's not a lot of instruction. And then there's also there's a 2-on-2 battle where it really just ends up being kind of chaotic because there's 4 people in this little ring that you're fighting in the arena. And so you kind of bounce in and out. You play a match. Sometimes the match will, anybody who was fighting me, those matches went really fast because I was not very good and I did not quite have a handle on what I was trying to do. I could appreciate and get a sense of, that I could use one left hook to drive them one way and come. If I could time it right, I could drive them into some people would, shoot missiles at me with one hand, which would force me to the left, and then their boomerang would come around and hook me. And so I could see, where there's this kind of juke, and there is a rhythm there. The mechanics of it all worked well. The connections were stable multiple times throughout the weekend. The connections were good. It would be nice to have a little more of a tutorial to figure out exactly how to play, but at the same time, very solid. For what it was, if people didn't get turned off by the, people who were maybe not on the same skill set, so it'll be interesting to see how they do matchmaking. Is it simply just throw everybody in? It is it going to rank you in some capacity, and do they have tiers? And so none of that was really clear. And I think that could be an interesting piece there in terms of how they provide that structure, because it could be, I could see it being very fun to play two people in the same room, but if it got nearly as frustrating as it did for all three of the people playing in my household, maybe playing in the same room against each other might not be the best idea either. So but again, technically very sound. The motion controls, it plays with both motion control, and you could shut it off and play just with the sticks as well. Played on the big screen, and again, because it's a Switch, played throughout the house. Stable connections, been able to move around, all worked out really well. So I was really interested in it. After playing a little bit, I'm not as hot on it. Maybe looking to see what type of single player or kind of co-op, can we play the volleyball mode together? Get a sense of what the reviews look at in terms of how the online matchmaking works. But in terms of structure, I think the test punch worked out okay. So questions about ARMS as a fellow Switch owner and one of the few games that might actually come out for the Switch this summer?
No, I mean, you kind of left me with the same questions I would have: is what do they have available for single player mode? Because I have yet to buy into the notion that a 1v1 fighting game played online would be anything that I would ever enjoy. Because you really, it's like Madden, right? Like everybody's gonna have super cheese spam moves that they're gonna figure out. That if you are a challenge, they can resort to, and I just don't like. I'm just not that invested in anything that I'm gonna like become an expert to defeat that. Like I would, before I put that time into a game, I'll just play the single player because, yeah, maybe I'm interested in the mechanics, but and we were talking. I can't remember. Maybe Prime and I were talking Injustice 2. That I just want to, it's just like any other game, I just want to get through the story and see the cutscenes, right? So,
yeah, no, that's the same. My son and I were talking about it after playing it some this weekend. We both really enjoyed playing Splatoon. He plays Overwatch a ton. This was a free Overwatch weekend, so he played that a lot. But again, there in a team-based game, you can contribute, and I can be a great medic in Battlefield 1 without having a great kill death ratio, and so in a 1v1 setting, you just don't have that opportunity. So, for some people, if that's what you enjoy, that's great, but I'm with you there on Injustice. I went back and played the original one with the hype around 2. It's that, what can I play? If my summer gaming is to relax after a long day, I don't need to be white knuckled against somebody else that I may or may not have a chance to control. So.
Well, right, and and this is why it's so important. Like, I don't know if you get a chance, but I'd encourage anybody listening to go back and listen to Osiris Prime and I's episode where we talked about the 3 manufacturers, and we get into this a little, like, just what really makes that online experience really interesting. And for me, for fighting games, when I go back and I talk about that summer playing Tekken Tag Team, right, what made it interesting was we weren't playing it online, but it was just a group of like 6 close-knit friends, and two of you stepped up to the plate and played the game, while four other people observed and, talked smack and, laughed and joked around. And that's what you need online. But, we were talking in that episode about what we want each of the console manufacturers to announce, and how for Microsoft and Nintendo, we were kind of insistent that there were certain factors they announced. And for Nintendo, it's, we have to hear more about this online gaming service, because what you need to know before plunking down for something like Arms, is, are they going to have something that allows you to have that kind of experience? Are they going to have a party system where, six of you can join up? Because you don't want to be playing a 1v1 fighting game with a bunch of randos in a public forum. You want a party where you can say, hey, cycle between the six of us in this party and have us each, face off against each other. And at least that way you could still have fun with your friends, even if you're not having fun competing.
Yeah, right. If you could set up your own tournament bracket, or just do like, here's a quick, here's 6 players in. Let's put that together, randomize it, and let's go. Just like what it was, back in a dorm room or at your workplace, as you were talking about, right? You're just passing the controller, winner takes on. I put the quarter up on the arcade machine for the next play. So, it would be it. That's the big piece with Nintendo is what is that going to be? We already know that the voice chat's going to come through the third-party app on the phone, but what type of structure are they going to provide for the online piece? And yeah, I think for Arms, that's a big piece of it. So I'm going to keep moving down the list here. I did add a couple other ones in June. It's a relatively thin June. So Valkyria Revolution. So it's kind of in that same timeline and gameplay style of Valkyria Chronicles. So this was a early PS3 game, got remastered for PS4, out on PC. It was kind of a turn-based strategy RPG game, and this one becomes much more of a traditional turn-based RPG, JRPG game. Kind of set, the first one was set in kind of a steampunk World War II. This is somewhere in the Industrial Revolution. Again, I don't know. I have liked the concept. I played the PSP version of this, the Valkyria Chronicles 2, back in the day. But again, I think as we're thinking about summer games, right, for some people who have that big block of time off, right? So here's a big JRPG. Earlier in June, you've got Elder Scrolls Online, the Morrowind expansion comes out. There's a remaster of Final Fantasy 12 coming out for the PlayStation 4, right? It becomes a chance for publishers to maybe get a game that isn't going to be a big fall hit, but to get it out at a time when somebody's got a chance to dedicate some time to a meaty game like that. And then for a little bit of Osiris Prime and some old gray nods there. So Elite Dangerous for the PlayStation 4 comes out on June 27th. And then we get to kind of, again, it's that summertime. And there's not a whole lot that's coming out, but Nintendo is giving us that drip feed of first-party titles. And we've got Splatoon 2 coming out on July 21st. I know my son is really eager and excited about that. And I think that one will have, we already know a little bit more about the single player there. So it plays out, so it'll be interesting to see how robust that is. And again, hopefully by the middle of summer, not only should we know what Nintendo's doing, but they might even have it up and running. And then we churn around all the way toward the end of August. And we've got Middle-earth Shadow of War on the 22nd. We've got Uncharted Lost Legacy on that same week. We've got Madden, the new version that's going to have kind of the FIFA story mode in it as well. And a game on here that is right around that same window of time is Agents of Mayhem by Volition, the Saints Row developer. So all kind of sneaking in that kind of not quite big AAA tier, but significant game that's trying to find some time before we head out into the fall releases.
Yeah, there's some really interesting plays here. Like, so Middle-earth Shadow of War coming out on August 22nd, right? I am still playing Shadow of Mordor. That's a big game. That's a big game to drop on August 22nd, and you're asking people to race to get into and through enough of it before Destiny 2 comes out about 2 weeks later. And it's probably your same player base that wants to play Shadow of War that is going to go and play Destiny 2, although they're slightly different genres. But just that whole notion of an action-oriented franchise-built game. Uncharted: The Lost Legacy, is probably creatively a warm-up for Naughty Dog fans before The Last of Us 2 comes out in the fall. Now that being said, Lost Legacy is about 8 hours of gameplay, is what I understand. So, do I drop money on Shadow of War, and a game that I know that I'm not going to complete before Destiny 2 comes out, or do I just go ahead and pay and play The Lost Legacy, knock that out in 8 hours, and then kind of have enough time to, kind of, wash my hands and get ready for Destiny 2, right? Probably the latter. It's tough for me to see picking up Shadow of War on August 22nd. And when you talk about the school dynamic, that's when a lot of people are going back. And there's value in the market in a back to school game, right? There's value, but that value comes from big multiplayer titles, because you kind of go back to the dorm with your Xbox One or your PlayStation 4, and you have the game that you and your buddies are going to play at the outset of the fall, now that you're all back at school together. So it'll be interesting to see how Shadow of War plays out. And one other one, I can't remember if you mentioned it or not, but I had read out at the bottom of the list, launching August 29th. That, in contrast to Shadow of War, for me is a nice launch spot, because it hits right before Labor Day weekend. And for fans of that genre, maybe they've been playing Wipeout right at the beginning of the summer, because it came out June 6th, and then they played that for a couple months, almost 3 months, and then you can pick up Redout. I'm interested to see how that one does as well, because I played that on the PC. It's a pretty amazing game when you put the muscle of a PC behind basically a thing that replicates Wipeout's core gameplay. So seeing that drop on PS4 and Xbox One, where obviously there's probably a larger user base, I think will be really interesting. Gutsy move to put it on the PlayStation 4. I don't know if when they made the choice that they knew this Wipeout Omega Collection was going to be coming out, but it'll definitely be interesting. If they're fortunate, Wipeout HD will just make people more interested in picking up an additional title in the same genre, because that's a subgenre that's not often fed a new title. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, right? That kind of futuristic high-speed racing genre there's few and far between that are done well, and so having it on the PS4, I think that especially, I would guess, depending on how Redout comes, is that it would be new tracks, it'd be new experiences, where the Wipeout Omega is, for big fans, it's previously played content.
And it's so different, and obviously I'm a racing game fan. If there are other racing game fans out there who get into that stuff, it's a weird place to be when there is potentially going to be Wipeout, Redout, and Fast RMX, right? 3 games all in that subgenre on different platforms, and they do play differently. It's one of the things that I've been commenting on recently, because this is the first time that we've really had things in that genre available. So comparing Fast RMX to Redout, those are 2 starkly different games that require different approaches, and can really kind of get you twisted around the axle, right? If you come at Fast RMX the exact same way that you do Redout, right? Because there are just mechanically different aspects that force you to think about the game differently. So it'd be a cool time and place to be in with all those games kind of out in that subgenre.
I think the last point I want to kind of, to me, what's striking about the 3 third-person games there is Agents of Mayhem on the 15th of August, the Lost Legacy on the 22nd, and Shadow of War on that same date. Again, they're all third-party, they're all third-person perspective games, right? Where there's not a August release of a first-person game. That they're kind of, everybody's kind of out of that shooter space for, with Destiny coming, with Battlefront, although Battlefront's not quite first person, but with Call of Duty, right? There's not that big. It's an interesting play that we've got 3 third-person perspective games coming out at that same point, and another contrast between the kind of tongue-in-cheek humor, over-the-topness of something like a Saints Row Agents of Mayhem, and the kind of serious, self-important aspect of Shadow of War, right? Again, a very strong narrative game. The first one was a very strong narrative game. That whole, the I can't even think of the name, right? Uh,
The
the
Nemesis system.
Nemesis system. Thank you, right? And that's even expanded even further this time, based on some of the gameplay that the outlets have been talking about. So, very different types of niches there before you hit kind of broad market holiday fall releases.
Yeah, and it's kind of, again, it's an interesting market dynamic, right? I don't know when else you do release games of that type, right? With the Titans that are kind of waiting in to the fall release. Um, you kind of have to put these things out. And the other thing is, I'm sure all of these titles were looking at the fall and all were trying to steer clear of Red Dead Redemption. Um, so
Yep. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
yeah, which is another thing, for companies, man. It's so tough. Like, what do you do when you maneuver to a janky release date because of this big, apex predator that you were afraid was going to release, and then they delay that game, right? Right? And your team is killing themselves trying to make sure that they're getting your game out on time. I'm not quite certain what I do at that point. Um,
Yeah,
because
I could almost see, with for as well received as Shadow of Mordor was, to have it be in that August spot where it doesn't really project the confidence of like an October release, right? I mean, this is a big, but again, we could be getting a big Spider-Man game in the fall, and that may be another third person perspective game that lands in that spot as well. So yeah, I think that is a tough spot for publishers. And then by the time that the holiday season starts up and sales pick up, these games end up being discounted. And what does that do for sales numbers? That they may, it may be good for if there's multiplayer components, but in terms of profits and revenue, that puts them in a tough spot. So we'll see. I mean, again, Shadow of Mordor had, the Game of the Year edition of that was great, kept selling numbers time after time. So potentially, Warner Brothers definitely gets invested in that. So we'll see, hopefully, some legs on that one as well.
yeah, you picked up the point I was going to make. I mean, it's, like you said, it was a major release when it came out. It was a launch window title for the PlayStation 4, and in a lot of ways, it scooped a lot of things that didn't release in that launch window, and was Game of the Year for a lot of sites. So interesting that you take that kind of legacy and I don't want to say late August is a dumping ground, but you drop it on August 22nd, and then the big beast that you were afraid was going to be around isn't even there.
So one last interesting point that as we've talked financials in the past, so I'm looking at Amazon for Agents of Mayhem, and the physical copy is $59, $59.99, right? Like every other new release. But the digital copy, and maybe it's an error, but the digital copy right now for PlayStation 4 is $42. So I mean, it gets that kind of 20% discount that Best Buy or Amazon's doing. It's even below that point, but it's a really interesting. There's not the same for Xbox. It's only for PlayStation 4. So I wonder if there's some change there, or again, that B tier type of August release, that price point makes sense, right? We were just talking about what a Wipeout works for at $40, right? The idea that a B team type of release could be something that's possible.
Well, overall, Amazon's business model is to undercut all of their competitors and try and make it up on volume, right? So, um, I was reading something I think over the last week that that I think now we're about to see Amazon be the leading retailer who comes out and shifts the battle space to this model where, as most of us have long thought it would make sense, for digital releases to be cheaper than than box copies, right? Because you don't have physical copies to ship, you don't have to put things on boats, trains, and planes and automobiles, and you don't have packaging. And GameStop doesn't have to put up some huge like diorama or whatever, showing the game and making sure that people who physically enter their store are aware that it's on shelves. So I think this is going to become Amazon's model as a standard. Um, and then we're going to get the chance over the next couple of years to see whether or not that forces the hand of all the other uh, digital release outlets as well as retailers to start shifting to kind of the same model.
Yeah, I think that will be an interesting piece, right? I mean, hopefully that's always been the direction, is that it's better for consumers, that we're seeing that. But again, when you have digital releases that are still kind of day one price points, 2 years after the fact, um, that's I can go to the store and physically pick up a copy for $10, $20 on sale on holiday sales. So Zeus, we've been talking quite a bit about summer games, but let's touch base quickly on some other games that we've been playing over the past week or so. And I've been out, so I haven't had a chance to hear what you've been playing. I've had a chance to talk about a lot of what I've been playing over the past week. You've talked a little bit about playing Dreadnought. Do you want to talk a little bit more about that, or some other games that you've been playing this week?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can't remember. I have written a couple different things in different places. I can't remember exactly where I've written. But man, it's an experience, right? And I will readily admit that I'm biased and jaded, right? This is just one of those games that, like I mentioned with Chromehounds, is just firmly targeted at my specific touch points, right? The things that really excite me. A big kind of co-op approach, even though it's PvP, right? But it's 4-on-4 or 5-on-5, and start in capital warship combat. It's and so the beta has maps. There were two maps that were in the beta. One of them is in atmosphere, and I'm still kind of trying to get accustomed to that. And that seems to be something that is happening across multiple genres. One of the things that's interesting is, I had to take a break from watching Rogue One, to come in and sit in on the podcast. And once again, as we saw in The Force Awakens, I see an Imperial Star Destroyer in atmosphere, and that just kind of still bugs me, right? It seems not right. So there is that, but it creates a very interesting dynamic when you're able to utilize terrain. In one of the training missions, there was actually a mountain, and then below the mountain, they have actually tunneled out a space dock or a bay that looks like it might have been used for like heavy ground vehicles or something like that. And at one point, I had a guy at a high angle firing down on me, an actual artillery ship, and the artillery ships can only fire directly in front of them. Essentially, they have a very small angle of fire. So I figured, well, if I can just get, tucked behind something, or way, create a big altitude delta between me and this guy, he won't be able to shoot me. So I actually dove and took the risk of going in through this docking bay at the bottom of this mountain. And then it was kind of like something straight out of like a Star Trek movie. And this is why, like, this game is so cool. And it's just going to breed hours and hours of content on YouTube, for creators and, myself, but, lots of other people are going to be streaming and video capturing this game. But so I dove down, flew through this docking bay, and then got to the other side and did straight positive Z, and came straight up. And there were, by that time, the artillery ship and one other combatant had maneuvered around behind these two columns that were at the next mountain range. So I kind of rose up directly vertically, was hidden behind these two towers, and then once I got to the altitude I wanted, just diverted power to engines, punched it straight forward, came around this mountainside, and took at least one of them out before I had to divert. So it's, again, it just evokes that feeling of like being in a Battlestar Galactica movie or being in a Star Wars or Star Trek movie, and it is so awesome. So there are 3 ship classes that were available in the beta. I think there were going to be more, but there was a destroyer, an artillery ship, which is, in the way the game kind of plays, they try and take these ship classes and model them kind of around first-person shooter classes like you would have in an arena kind of first-person shooter game. So there was a destroyer, which is kind of the perfect balance, right? So lots of weapons, good shields, but not necessarily pretty decent maneuverability, but they're not the fastest vessel. The artillery ships can fly really fast in a straight line, and at lower speeds they are highly maneuverable, but they don't have a lot of shielding. They can't take a lot of damage, and their field of fire is fairly small. But man, they can lay down a huge amount of punishment. And then the most interesting ship class and the most difficult to play, but maybe the most rewarding, is a support cruiser, and it has a bunch of beam turrets that automatically shift between supporting versus causing damage. And so if you fire the beam at a friendly, it will actually um, do repairs on that vessel and get its hit points essentially back up, its hull integrity back up. You can supercharge that beam and make that happen faster, but the beam lasts for a shorter period of time before it has to recharge. But you can also train those beam weapons on enemies and have it cause them damage. Each of the different vessels typically has some type of missile that they can fire. The destroyer is really neat because at the outset it can fire both torpedoes and a salvo of missiles. So the destroyer, like I said, is very powerful, but it does need to get in a little closer to exact the most damage. But if it gets in close, it's a punishing capital warship. The artillery cruiser is going to want to stay out at distance, which, if you get too far, it makes it harder to land a shot, because when people do very small maneuvers, it throws off your trajectory. And then the support cruiser, like I said, is very rewarding, and it can kind of fight at kind of medium range, but you don't want to get in too close with people. And really what you want to do as the support cruiser is you really want to tuck in tight with one of your own vessels. So the thing that I found the most rewarding, because it contributes the most to battle, is if you pair up with one of your destroyers and get in close and keep that destroyer juiced up as far as hull integrity goes, and keep it in the fight as long as possible and allow it to do a lot of damage. Now, there is one other ship class that wasn't available, that wasn't playable in the beta, and I don't know if it will be, but there teams, I believe eventually teams will actually have access to an actual Dreadnought, which would be the most powerful ship in the game, although they are very big and very sluggish and can be taken down if a lot of ships gang up on them. So, and like I said, I've been playing that on PlayStation 4.
So it's an open beta.
Yeah.
It's an open beta for PC. Is it open for PlayStation 4 as well?
No, it's a closed beta on PS4.
Okay.
So I did have to get an invite, and once I had the invite, another negative is you have to sign up for a Greybox account. I don't think that they're going to make it available via Steam. You will have to go to the publisher to buy it, I believe is the intention of the PC version. But once I had my invite for PlayStation 4 and I signed up for a Greybox account, then I could just download the PC beta.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at online, is that the PC beta is an open beta. So if that idea of what Zeux is talking about in terms of, kind of diving into that ship-to-ship combat, some capital maneuvers, playing out your Star Destroyer or your Battlestar Galactica fantasies, I think Zeux is right. I mean, just the way he describes that, the action and the events that it ends up creating between, kind of those emergent gameplay aspects, is something that makes for good streaming, makes for good conversations, makes for good kind of water cooler conversations in terms of, hey, can't believe what happened, right? I mean, those are the things that make summertime gaming fun, is that you can walk away, you've got a story to tell somebody else, and whether that's somebody online or whether it's somebody in person, that is one of the best moments of gaming, is when you can tell those stories like Zeux was telling here. So I think, Zeux, we're getting close to our mark for time. So any other big games or any other notable stories that you want to tell before we head out for the day?
The only thing, it's been out for a while, but I don't know if a lot of people know about it. So I did pick up my NVIDIA Shield Portable again this weekend after a long layoff. It actually took it with me on travel. And one of the things I grabbed from the store was Grand Theft Auto Vice City, which plays pretty well on a portable, on an Android portable. The vehicular control was not great, but it did play fairly well. So just a reminder that things out there on the Shield are available out there like that on the Shield platforms, allowing you to revisit some classic games. Now, so you mentioned the Marvel Heroes Omega beta, but did you get a chance to talk through it in any detail, or is there anything specific you wanted to point out about that?
No, I mean, I guess it's Marvel Heroes 2015, Marvel Heroes 2016. It's the Diablo action RPG set in the Marvel universe. It was some of the Diablo, as you were talking about Diablo 2, right? It's some of the Diablo 2 people that have some lineage there. The PlayStation now is on open beta. It was closed beta for the last 3 or 4 weeks or so. If you bought into one of the founders packs, the cheapest founder pack for a PlayStation is $17 for a single character for War Machine. For $20 you can get Deadpool, or $20 you can get Spider-Man. I've played it last summer. I put in. So here's another summer game from last year. Was I played it on PC? It was, as I started my new job, it was a great kind of zone out game with not a lot of mental capacity that was needed for it. And I picked up Iron Man and Captain America after the Civil War movie on a Steam sale for like $3 or $4. The buy-in can be pretty pricey. If you want an X-Men pack or the Guardians of the Galaxy, you're talking $60 for those characters. But right now, you've got enough as you get started to play. Daredevil is a free character on PlayStation, and then you get enough in-game currency to buy a couple characters right away within the beta. So it plays out pretty well. It doesn't quite have the same like role mechanic. I think Diablo on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One played out excellent. In terms of kind of target acquisition and controls and movement. But there is some evade moves that each character has, so that allows you to kind of move around the screen a little bit faster, and it makes for a pretty active game. Graphics wise, it's relatively, it's a 2014 game for PC. It's still running in that same type of engine, and so it's not going to be anything super fancy, but it works. It's crisp, it's clear. The skins on all the different characters. So for comic geeks like us, it's got plenty of fan service, and whether it's the cinematic universe or multiple costumes, you've got the ability to either buy it with in-game currency and save up for it, or to plop down some actual coin and play it there. So again, I'm enjoying what I'm playing. The menu system has a kind of a radial memory, radio menu, which works pretty well. One of the things I found playing the PC version is that I was overwhelmed in type of crafting materials that I would get very quickly, and it filled up my inbox, and it was hard to manage. This version seems to manage some of that a little bit better. And so I was not, kind of overfilled within my inventory. I was able to kind of get things that were relevant and get rid of things or sell things that were not. So I'm really enjoying it. It's not a deep game yet, but again, if you were looking to play something, get online with some friends, regardless of where you are, and catch up, it's kind of a very casual game to be able to do that.
Now this is an expansion to the same Marvel Heroes that's kind of like DC Universe Online that's been out for a few years, right?
Yes, right. So DC Universe Online is very traditional kind of MMO in terms of it's got some action elements, but it's kind of that third person. This plays out very much, at least on the computer, it plays out very much like an action RPG where you're kind of pointing and clicking, holding down. You've got hotkeys for different types of attacks, and on a controller, it maps pretty much the same, where you've got, you're moving around, you're kind of floating around with flying characters. It's relatively, if you think about Diablo and slap it in with Marvel characters, you're kind of playing the same type of game. So it's enjoyable. As a Marvel fan, it's fun to kind of play around with the different characters and different move sets. Whether it's a brawler character or somebody who's shooting, a flying character and playing Nova, shooting out projectiles. Yeah, so it works out. Again, it's out there in an open beta right now for anybody to kind of pick up and play. You don't have to purchase anything. It is a free-to-play game. So even after it's out of open beta, anybody could drop in at any point in time and give it a chance. It may be something for people who are more comic fans than video game fans, that it's an easy game to kind of dive into and play around with as well.
Very cool. Very cool.
So that puts us well at our mark. We are coming up to our hour stop. So I'm going to wrap it up here, Zeus, and we've got another newscast coming this Thursday, episode 92, as we churn our way to closer and closer to E3. We'll see what news leaks over the week, see what things in terms of predictions have already been proven wrong, or we get some more hints about other things. So any final thoughts, any notes before we head out, Zeus?
Yeah, and check out the last episode of the newscast, which is up on YouTube. I don't know that I've gotten it distributed anywhere else, but it is up on YouTube. And we talk Xbox Live Game Pass is one of the big stories that we kind of break down there. And also just a reminder that this show, the Band of Gamers core show, is going to be rebranded shortly, starting the week after E3. And we are currently taking applicants and candidates who want to become part of the rotating cast, because we would like to expand that and get some additional people in the seat here, and also kind of get back to having a standard 4-person podcast. So if you go to gearworks.com, which you can see the spelling for that on my lower third, then an article is posted there which gives you directions on how to apply. And also, we talked to Chunk about the Dreadnought Beta on PS4, and I do have 2 videos posted of those gameplay sessions over on my channel, Rounding Off Infinity, which you can also find the spelling of in my lower third, and just tap that into YouTube and do a search for the channel and look for the most recent 2 videos. As of today, in a couple of days, they'll start being moved down the list as I post new stuff, but they are both at the top of the list right now. One is a shorter play session, I think, but then one is kind of an hour and a half. Well, I should say one is against the AI. It's just the training missions, but the second mission is PvP against other players.
All right. Yeah, that's great. Good plugs and good content. Thank you, Zeus. And I think as well, the idea of anybody who's listening out there or watching that is interested in joining us in the rotation, or you're listening to me and saying, he is wrong, somebody needs to correct him, now's your chance. Tell us how wrong you are. Come in and join us. If there are game styles that we're not covering or things that we're not appreciating that you love, the hope is to expand our audience, to expand our perspective. So if there are people out there, if you're listening out there and that is you, don't hesitate. Obviously, you don't need a lot of experience. You can learn on the job, and all you need to be able to do is love what you do. And so as we head out into the start of summer and think about what games we'll be playing, I want to thank everybody for listening and watching, and I want to thank you, Zeus, as well, for spending time on this Memorial Day evening. So until next time, we will see you all back here on Thursday for our newscast. And until then, peace.